Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the podcast on the Sikha. Tonight, we are focused on the Sikha in Chelik Chav Zayin, Vayikra Aleph. I'm joined together with my friend Moshe Grari from Toms River, New Jersey, and Yisrael Willem from Colorado, Boulder, Colorado. And just a little intro into the Sikha. Today, we're talking about pledges of a korban and the different types of korbanos, the different types of pledges, large pledges, small pledges, large animals, small animals, different types of animals. And really a deeper question here is, when a person does a mitzvah, commits to a mitzvah, is it something that they're doing? Is it technical? A person could be doing a mitzvah but still holding back. Yet the idea of a korban is a person is bringing themselves entirely forward in connection to Hashem. They're being makriv themselves. They're bringing themselves close to a state where there's nothing left behind. They're fully there. And to connect us to Parshas Vayikra and of course the Rambam, Moshe, if you will set the table for us, what are we talking about?
All right. I think to paraphrase your introduction and things that are on my mind right now, when two people enter into a relationship, there's a bunch of things that they have to do. He has to take out the garbage and she does it, whatever, the different things is, two people, a partnership, there's checklist items. I do my part, you do your part. A relationship, the question can be asked, is it a checklist relationship or is it an investment of the nefesh, the fully involved into making this relationship work? And that's the discussion we're having today. To try to give just a glimpse into the Sikha, the Rebbe brings a Rambam based on a Mishnah that says that if a person pledged a smaller korban, and he brought a larger korban, even though it's not exactly what he promised, nevertheless, the halacha is that he's fulfilled his pledge. By bringing something larger, he still fulfills his pledge. And the question becomes, and the Rebbe elaborates on the question, but I'm keeping it very brief. The Rebbe asks, how can you cover your pledge, even if it's a more expensive one, possibly, or larger in size? How, if you didn't fulfill what you promised, how can you say the pledge is fulfilled? And the Rebbe introduces us to an approach that when we pledge, when we make a promise, whether it's a financial pledge or whatever it might be, there are the words that we use, and then there is the message behind those words, the intent of the person. And ultimately, and there in the Gemara, there's actually a machlokes between Rabbi and Rabbanon, but the discussion is, does the person have to fulfill the words that he spoke, or is it sufficient that he fulfill the message or the intent that he had at the time of the pledge? And this is why, according to the Rabbanon, the person fulfills his obligation, because since the intent was to get closer to Hashem, and the larger korban fulfills that, becoming closer to Hashem, maybe even more than the smaller one. Therefore, even though he didn't fulfill the exact utterances of his lips, nevertheless, the intent was fulfilled, and therefore, halachically, it is considered that he has fulfilled his pledge. This is a very brief breakdown of the halacha part of the Sikha. And this leads to a fascinating conversation that we're about to have.
Yeah, and as you said before we started this, is that you don't see a difference between the Chassidus and the Nigla. It's all one, and it's in short is you can be literal about anything. Like you spoke about a relationship, you could be exactly literal. I have a son with autism, so one of his friends told me that another parent told me that that another kid with autism, and and they said, we're taking the $100 and give it to two people. So he took the $100 bill and he cut it into two. You know what I mean? He cut the bill into two because, you know what I mean? It's you got to get 50 each. You know, but obviously we know like the thing that disturbs people most in any relationship is, are we only living on the literal level, on the letter of the law, on exactly what it's exactly what it says, or can there be something deeper? Can there be a carbon? Can there be something that's beyond? So I don't have to stick to exactly what I said when I'm doing it a lot better, when I'm giving it a lot more passion, and that's essentially the nigla part of the conversation. And in Chassidus, as the Rebbe says, the foundation, and this really was so geschmack in this Farbrengen, the foundation of the relationship with the Eibishter is a carbon, is that I want to be connected, I want to be close to Hashem. That is, without getting into the specifics, it's the general idea that I'm looking for a relationship with the Eibishter.
I think it's worthwhile to take a minute and step back into, it seems like the entire Sikha, the Rebbe is really struggling with one question, going back and forth with various different types of answers, but really trying to understand how could it be that you promised something and you said something and you uttered words and you're not keeping your word. And I think that before we get to the answer, just to take a moment to understand, because everybody answers it and then takes away the answer and back and forth and back and forth. And what's really just interesting about that is I think that it's a very practical question or occurrence that we have all the time. We have it with our children, we have it with our spouses, we have it with people, or you have it in an argument that you get with somebody and you say something and the words that you use, you sort of are almost held against you sometimes. You said this, and you did. And the Rebbe's trying to understand, but you did say this. You said something and you're not keeping it. Now, I'm doing better. That's very good. I mean, if it's technical, then and I'm doing better, that's fine. But if it's in a relationship, doing better doesn't work because that's not what you told me you were going to do. So the thing that's bothering the Rebbe in the beginning of the Sikha and the entire Sikha is really the Rebbe is looking at this, at least the way I understand it, is looking at this entirely from a relationship perspective, and that's what's bothersome almost, is that you said something and you're not fulfilling your commitment to it. So how does it work? How does it work that you could come along now and say, yeah, I didn't do that, but I did something else and it's better, and therefore it's okay. And in arguments with people that you may have, often arguments go off the rails because of the words that are used. And sometimes, if you have the awareness in the argument to be like, okay, I didn't mean that word. What are you getting stuck on one word that I said? Are you going to hold that word against me forever because that was the one word? What about having some validation for where I'm coming from and what's actually happening? What's going on over here?
I want to say exactly on this note. I want to say it's going to be a little bit nigladik, but I found this very fascinating in the Sikha, where the Rebbe refutes the explanation in the beginning, and I'll explain in a moment. But the problem is that it's a Rashi, so in Rashi and the Gemara, so the Rebbe has to come back to it. One of the suggestions was that yesh bichlal meruba muat, that in the larger animal, it's really inclusive of the smaller animal. And the Rebbe asks, that's not really true. Like when you say in $200, there's $100, that's a fact. You can separate 100 from 200, but you can't separate a lamb from a ram. So, and therefore the Rebbe moves on to another explanation, which is ultimately what we're discussing. But the Rebbe, one of the Ha'aris, says that you could still use the words yesh bichlal meruba muat. It works. Because if the idea is that the whole purpose here was the intent, then when you fulfill the intent, you're even though you're not doing exactly what you said you're going to do, but because what you said you were going to do really had a broader picture, the broader picture includes everything. In other words, using the words of the Sikha, if the person's kavanah, the person's intent wasn't specifically to bring a lamb, it was to get closer to Hashem. So when he brings the ram and he gets closer to Hashem, the intent was fulfilled. And the Rebbe says, Yeshloimar, that's the Taich and the Rashi, Yeshbech and Bartanura, Yeshbech Lal Meruba Muat, that in the Meruba, the larger thing includes the smaller thing because ultimately you are fulfilling the intent of your initial pledge. I found this absolutely fascinating. How the Rebbe is so careful to touch the Rashi, even though he refuted the basic pshat in Rashi, but he's able to take the beer and fit it into those words. But more importantly, based on what you just said, if the Rebbe is bothered by the fact that in a relationship or in a connection with another person, it has to be built on honesty. And if you said you're going to do something and you don't come through, then what kind of relationship it is? The Rebbe is saying in his answer that ultimately he did come through, because it wasn't just about the words. The words were representative of a much broader intent. And when he fulfills that broader intent, it's not that he said small and he did big. He said something that had a broader intent, because ultimately that's really what we're all about. It's not about the checklist. It's really truly about the need for connection. And therefore, when ultimately we carry that out and we are connecting to, in this case, to Hashem, then even the small thing that he said is, in a sense, being fulfilled. I hope I explained that well. To me, this was one of the most fascinating parts of the Sikha, where exactly the way you presented the question, and that ha'ara, that you could still use the words yes b'chlal meruba muat, answers exactly that question. The person is not being dishonest. On the contrary, he's opening himself up to something deeper that he wasn't even aware possibly when he spoke. And he comes back to the core of the relationship.
I think it's built on a concept that the Rebbe speaks about in the Sikha, which maybe we'll want to take a few minutes to discuss the difference between a mitzvah and a carbon. A mitzvah essentially is what you do, and a carbon, I think it's fair to say, is who you become. And the Rebbe in the classic, the Rebbe's beautiful way, is really, like you said, Michael, is really being melamed zchus, not even melamed zchus, but really psychoanalyzing the relationship to say that you could get carried away in the technical if you'd like to, in the nitty gritty of the deed and and what was said or what wasn't said.
And that is important. And that is important.
And for that matter, there's a machlokes. You know, it's a real discussion in the Mishnah. It's not a simple thing, and there are opinions that say it's not good enough. So it's valid, and one must be careful with what they say and what they pledge. But the bigger picture here is the difference between what a carbon is in relation to all the mitzvahs. Maybe we want to take a few minutes just to break that down a little bit, because that really explains the answer of why it's not only okay or b'diavad, so to speak, but it's the honest truth of where the person's coming from when they don't fulfill technically what they've said. But because we're not talking about two technicalities, we're talking about looking a little bit deeper into what's actually happening here. I know we're talking a lot of words, a lot of things. Again, just to bring the listener back in, you know, in the basic story, like Moshe introduced here, you pledged a lamb, and instead you brought a ram, and it's a much bigger animal, or a calf, and instead you decide you know, it's like your campaign. You call up your friend, how much are you in for, and they say 180, and then they go and they give, you know, 770, or they give 1,000, or whatever the number may be. So obviously with money, we just discussed that the smaller monies are in the bigger monies, but what is the intention? But the point is here is that within mitzvahs, and every mitzvah that we do, and the Rebbe compares the mitzvahs. Maybe I'll let Yisrael, if you want to just talk about the mitzvahs, and we could break it down and understand the difference of really what is happening when we do a mitzvah, and how is that different to the idea of karbanis.
Right. So, without getting into the question of what comes first, you know, the details or the
It's another
key
Farbrengen, maybe.
what?
It's another Farbrengen.
It doesn't speak about what comes first over here. You know what I mean? What's because we also know first maybe comes a mitzvah, just get the tefillin on, and then we'll worry about the kiruv later. So what comes first we can discuss, but the best is just to look in the Sechel. I think when something is written so beautifully in the beginning of those tests, just to continue what you're saying, it says when a yid is noider a carbon, so when a yid pledges a carbon, is doch teuchle vinyanim nidnos was kommt mit keim seine mitzvah. A carbon is not a specific, detailed mitzvah, nor canal the in a kloli from makriv sein sich and Rebbe Anton sich. It's the general idea of bringing yourself closer in ganzen weggeben sich zum Eibischen, in totality to give yourself to Hashem, and that's a specific mitzvah means I put on tefillin because I want to be Mishabim Alev Mayach on my heart. I want to be in a better place. I say Mudani, I want to be more grateful, whatever it may be. But this is not related to a specific mitzvah. This is the general idea of. It's not how many mitzvahs I do. He says it's not the numbers of how many. It's not the details. I've done X amount of mitzvahs today. It's a general kavana that I am. My heart's in a different place. I'm totally dedicated to the Eibishter, and no matter what comes, it's beyond the specifics and the details. I mean, this is really where the Farbrengen should be at. About how we can inspire ourselves to become that place, to get to that place where we are just all about. We're all in. It's 100%. It's not like a specific, and how to find the beauty, as you said, the limit schus in the Yidden who their heart is really in the right place, and unfortunately sometimes the mitzvahs are not. You know what I mean? Like just the reality.
It reminds me of the story, and I forget who it's with. You'll remind me of the chassid who was stuck in a jail, and he wasn't able to daven Ma'ariv because there was. There was
Brothers, yeah.
There was what?
Reb Zusha and Reb Melech.
Right.
Zusha of Anipali and Reb Elimelech Milizensk.
And
there was a bucket of a toilet bucket in the room, and they couldn't daven.
Right. So one had pain that he couldn't daven Ma'ariv, and the other had no pain, or was besimcha. And I think it's the same concept here. Is if you're caught and stuck on the mitzvah that you can't do, the Rebbe actually brings a very interesting thing. The Rebbe takes a moment to speak about mitzvahs, how they're connected to the Ramach Evarim and the Shasa Gidim, and every mitzvah has its technical impact, and it's interconnected to the body, and life, and Kehem Chayenu, and we were learning the Sikha earlier. We were talking about, I don't know if it's fair to say, but when people would come to the Rebbe for brachas for various different things, whether it was panasa or gesund or shidduch or whatever it was that they were lacking, and more often than not, the Rebbe would advise them or give a bracha or encourage them to strengthen in a particular mitzvah or check a mezuzah or whatever it may be. We don't know the Rebbe's inyanim and how the Rebbe did that, or what the Rebbe was seeing, or what the Ruach HaKodesh meant. But maybe, you could say that there's a connection. I mean, obviously from the Sikha saying there's a connection between the well-being of a person, begashmias, interconnected to the technicalities of the mitzvahs. It's all interconnected. So there's a correlation, and there's a science to the way these things operate. You need a tzaddik, you need a Rebbe to be able to see right through that and say, your deficiency is in this, and strengthening that and having that nutrition is going to spiritually uplift you and help you and change your mazel, or whatever it may be, whatever the situation the person may be going through. But that's all in relation to the mitzvahs. And that's why when a mitzvah can't be performed, a person could have pain or could feel bad, and person who kochs in a certain mitzvah, it's very specific. But a carbon, I think that the message here is, just sort of falling back to Ger Tshuva and the whole idea of a carbon, and what a carbon represents is a person is in a place where they've severed the relationship. They've done something wrong. whether the tshuva is coming from the fact that they didn't do a mitzvah or they were Eivra and Avera. But right now their relationship is lacking, or it could be a carbon nadava, which is another thing. Which but the concept of a carbon is kiruv, is coming close, and it's not about the checklist. It's about who you become. It's not about what you're doing.
If I could
Yeah.
veer a little bit away from the content of the Sikha and focus a little bit on the fact that we are a week before Yud Aleph Nisan. And the Rebbe spoke the concept of matanas. It comes to Yud Aleph Nisan. There was an answer to one of the yeshivas, I think it was Australia, where they said that they're bringing, that each bacher is learning a Perek Tanya. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a seemingly it was a small thing. And the Rebbe wrote V'ksav Yad Kodshe Hareza Ashir Shehevi Minchas Ani. It's like a wealthy person bringing a poor man's gift, which obviously meant that for the Bachrim, he was expecting something more than that. And using the language of the Sikha, there is something that you can do in a maimer, a blat gemara, a Sikha, where you do something as a hachana for Yud Aleph Nisan. You want to get a little closer. But sometimes what's needed is a carbon, where you throw yourself all in. You're not just giving something to the Rebbe, but you're giving yourself to the Rebbe. And I don't exactly know how to quantify the difference, but I will say this, is that one of the ways you can know the difference is Yud Beis Nisan. When you gave something, so Yud Aleph Nisan came, you paid up your pledge, and you're back to your kitchen, kratzing the counters. But when you were makriv yourself, when you gave the Rebbe a carbon of yourself, then it doesn't go backwards in Yud Beis. After Yud Aleph Nisan, it's been zugebunden. Obviously, you have to work on yourself. But the idea of a carbon is not just that I did something for the Rebbe, but I gave myself away. And if you will, I'll maybe I should give someone else a chance to talk. But this is sort of using the language of the Sikha and applying it to us as regular people in the days leading up to Yud Aleph Nisan, and that there is that what the Rebbe wants from us, what we could give the Rebbe Nachas is obviously, if a person pledges cotton and he does cotton, is yatsa. If you could do, you have to do the best you can. But the Rabbanan are teaching us, the Rambam is teaching us that it's not just the idea of giving something. More importantly, is to give yourself or something of yourself. Anyway, I'll give someone else a chance. As soon as you say it, I get excited.
Two separate things. Number one is which we also bring about, is that you can pledge a cotton. You pledge a small amount, but you're don't put that limit on yourself. That's just it's a limit you're putting on yourself. Really, the Eibishter expects a godly from you. I'm saying you need to go big or go home. I mean, there's no business, and that's the whole limitation you're putting on yourself in general. As the Rebbe says in Ois Yud, beginning halting the eating the matzah shakatnus. You start. I mean, that's how you start. I mean, look, I know I repeat this almost every Farbrengen we speak about, but it's like, it's my life. I just sat with students right before this. We had a beautiful class about pledging a mitzvah for an hour and a half, but coming up with practical ideas of how to do mitzvahs. And listening to these beautiful Yidden, nothing else to say. We said there's a guy in my shul. Every davens loud, and there's a few things he says out very loud. And one of them is, he goes, and he goes like this, he goes, and I said to him, what is this? He goes, I don't know. He goes, I'm not the best guy, but Avraham Avinu wasn't chosen because he was the best guy. Hashem loved what he had. Hashem loved his heart. because my heart is all in. If I would do it, it's all in. And it's so beautiful. You know, it's so empowering. You know, it's humbling to be able to sit with students and listening to them. You know, I would love to put on tefillin. I would love to say Moedani every day. I'd love to say Shema, whatever it is. And they're speaking about mamash u'matzasas avav v'nemal v'nechel. Even that pashut, the heart is 100% more than anything in the 100% in the right place. And the fact that they don't get to the details is not because they don't want it, and not because I mean, Shmuel, you know what I'm talking about. It's you experience this for a living, you know what I mean? Just being able to see, and that's also the truth for myself, is that listen, I'm not gonna every single day be the best person, and sometimes I'll be a cotton, but if I'm working on my avodah, as I really I wanna be the best, you know, like I wanna have this relationship. I'm in 100%. The Eibusha responds in kind and ultimately pushes us to godless, you know, to much bigger than we can expect. I mean, that's really what I have to share. It's more than anything else. That's what I'm inspired by what you had to say over here. Shmuley.
No, you're saying beautiful. I like the Matzah L'Slavavin Nemal V'Necha. But no, it's great. It's great. I think that just to echo what you're saying, you know, you learn a sikha and we're talking about it, and the question is really, what's the takeaway? And how does this relate to me? And what does it mean? And what does it mean to give a carbon? You know, what does it mean to bring myself to the table? Moshe was saying before, what's the icius? It's hard to say that a mitzvah doesn't matter, because those are words we shouldn't, you know, you can't use. And of course it matters. You can't say such words even.
Yeah, our whole life, that's what we're doing.
Of course. And that's the whole theme of Miftzayim, and just one mitzvah change the world, you know, and of course. But there's a certain image, and there's a certain plan, and there's a certain self that's interconnected, especially with the lives that we live with our mitzvahs, you know, the esrog that I'm going to have and the esrog that I don't have and I'm not happy with, and every mitzvah that way. And it's all part of it. It could very well become part of our routine, part of our way of living, part of our persona, as it should. It doesn't have to be negative. But I think here what we're saying is that the carbon represents a surrender away from the I, away from my plan, away from because the whole problem in the sikha is, if it's what you said, then you said, and you're not delivering on your words. And Rebbe is saying, no, it's not about what you said. It's not about you. Let's stop talking about you. Let's stop talking about the details. Let's ask ourselves a bigger question, like you said, where's your heart? Where's your levave? Who are you? And I think that there's a very powerful reflection point here for ourselves. There's always more that we could do, and we should always do more. But maybe we could give ourselves a little bit of credit. And maybe we could pat ourselves on the back a little bit. I'm not trying to give anybody a pass or anything like that. And there's always more work. And there's always more mitzvahs that we could do more behider. And there's always more things that we could do better. And things that we don't do, we should begin to do. But there's also something very valuable about recognizing the intent, like you said in the beginning, Maishla, of who we are. And we are, all of us on this podcast, all of us listening, all the people that we're involved in, whether it's our students, whether it's the people we're interacting with, whether it's our community, we all are that carbon. We live that life. We may not be living perfect lives, but we really are. And this is the Rebbe's message of the Sikha, is that this is who those people are. This is who the Jewish people are. This is what Am Yisrael is about. And therefore, we're not going to take the time now to catch you on your words. We're going to recognize the relationship that we have with the Eibishter. And it's something, if everybody takes a moment to reflect on that, don't beat yourself up on the nitty-gritty. Doesn't mean you can't do better. It doesn't give you a pass, but take some time out to recognize who you are. You're a Yid. You're doing amazing things. Your life is a carbon to the Eibishter, whether you're in business, whether you're giving tzedakah, whether you're raising a family, you're being Meiser Nefesh, you're giving your life over to other people, whether it's your spouse and your children, and you're paying tuitions, and you're keeping kosher, and you're you're running Erev Shabbos to do all the things and to bake the challah, and on and on and on and on. It's we live a life, especially today, far beyond the technicals of the mitzvahs. And because of that, there's no reason to weigh us down on again, it doesn't give us a pass to say, okay, so then I don't have to do the mitzvah so well. I don't have to daven ma'ariv with a minyan. No, that's not the idea. But there is a very powerful, I don't know if I'm making sense, but there's a very powerful message that the Rebbe's, at least my takeaway is that it's very refreshing to know that our interactions of mitzvahs are part of a much larger picture of our commitment and our surrender to our relationship with the Eibishter.
Beautiful.
I want to just add to what you're saying, Shmuley. Not even add, paraphrase. And there's in the Hanocha Bilti Muge, in other words, in the original transcript of the Farbrengen, which it doesn't have the always exact same words. Over there, there's a lashon where the Rebbe asks. The Rebbe's question is: if a person said that he's going to give something small, why? Probably because he wanted to give more, but he couldn't. So he said, right now, this is what I could do. So the Rebbe says, in that case, so why are you allowing him to do more? It's not what he promised. The lashon in the Hanoch is like this: when the person was making the small pledge, the thought going through his mind was, I wish I had more. If only I had more, I would be giving more. Because since it's all about carbon and getting closer, and the person is not just looking to get away with fulfilling his dues, but he really wants to belong and connect, in the very time when Nadar Katan, he's going through his mind is, I want to give something big. And that's why, as soon as it becomes a possibility that he could give big, he gives big. And the Rebbe connects this with the concept of Lechatchila Riber. And with this, I'll conclude my remarks for the night. The Farbrengen, of course, the Sikh is from a Farbrengen of Yud Gimel Tishrei, which is Gimel Tishrei, the yard site of the Rebbe Maharash, whose very well-known saying was Lechatchila Riber, that the world might say we try this way, that way. But the Rebbe Maharash says Lechatchila Riber, that we go above and beyond. I don't know if anybody has yet come up with a proper translation in English for the words Lechatchila Riber, but this is how the Rebbe teaches Lechatchila Riber. A person, even when they're in a matzav of katan, even when it feels small, their attitude is Lechatchila Riber. I'm going to do the best I can. Right now it's a lamb. Right now it's one Perek Rambam. Right now it's 1 hour of Mivtzoyim, whatever it might be. But not because I'm a small person. It's only because this is where I'm holding now. I can't take upon myself more than I can. But berega that I have more money in the bank, berega that I'm able to do something more, that's really who I am, and that's where I am. And therefore, but yes, Bechlal Har B'muat. But when he gets there, it's not like he has to make a new promise. This is who he was all along. And this is what the Rebbe is using, which Shmuley was saying before. The Rebbe is teaching us how to look at ourselves, how to look at another Yid, how to look at ourselves. We're not small. We might be going through a period of small, so we have to be honest with ourselves and say the right words. But the truth is, we're capable of so much more. And therefore, Heivi Gadol. And therefore, the Heivi Gadol that Rebbe Sifyuli teaches 2 ways. Number one, the very fact that he's making the pledge, that already is Gadol, as the Rebbe is saying here, because really he intends to bring much more than he's actually saying he's going to bring. And then the Heivi Gadol is a promise. And the lesson is, "Das brengt zu der Akrava v'kira beifishal gadlus." It's not just a description of the facts. It's actually a haftacha that b'shas will be another cotton. When we pledge something small, but with the intent that we're giving ourselves, we're going big. Then the end is that the Eibishter helps us, that we taka go big, we taka go lechatchila riber, we lift ourselves up to a point that we did Maila of Akasov, that we wouldn't have even known how to get there ourselves. But with the Eibishter's help, he sees we're putting in our part. In an oifen of lechatchila riber, the Eibishter takes us to the next level.
Beautiful. I honestly, I don't have much to add. I'm just going to say, repeat it in my words, in my experience,
Please.
I would say, but it's really the same thing. For me, like when I think about the Rebbe on a very personal way, like it's the most amazing thing is that we're ktanim. We're born in worlds where we're raised to be small people. And the Rebbe believed in me so much and that's every video you watch. It's the Rebbe pushing people because the Rebbe believed in people and more. And hopefully, on Shlichus, I'm sharing that same empowering people to believe in themselves. They can be such greater Yidden than they ever thought they could be. And really what you said is that the small mitzvah they do is never small. They might think it's small, but it's not really small. There's no such thing as something small. When you're doing a mitzvah, it's gadol. It's big from the get-go. If you're doing, especially when you're doing it with a heart, that you're doing the pshittas. I'm talking about the simple yid. The simple yid is, the jealousy of a simple yid is the heart. That pashit, when you see that chassid, Reb Zishra Partizan is jealous of just the heart they had. It's the hearts they had is unbelievable. And when we hang around, the fact that the Rebbe wanted me to believe that every yid I meet is a gadol, is a great yid, is a great person, and could be the greatest person. And there's no such thing as a small mitzvah. And yeah, anyway, it's very personal and very real. And l'chaim.
I'll just finish off with one sort of backwards twist. Just listening to you guys talk, if it's okay, a little bit negative, but I think it brings out a positive point, and that is that it's true that a person who's a katan could be considered a gadol, but that only works in the space of a carbon. In other words, when a person's whole life is only about the mitzvahs, and that's it, then the day that there's no mitzvahs, for whatever reason, chas v'shalom, let's say they decide not to do mitzvahs one day, they're lost. They don't have Yiddishkeit. They'll lose their connection. And a phenomenon that we've all experienced with people that we know, friends that we know, family friends or others or whatever it may be, where maybe they had a yerida that went off the derech for a little while or whatever it may be. But the beauty that I've experienced, and it's tremendously heartwarming, and I'll say it because it's the truth, is that even in those times, those actions were technical. For whatever reason, didn't want to get up for Krishma, whatever, okay, is Yitzhahara. But there's a carbon behind that. There's a dedicated Jew connected to the Eibishter because of the carbon, because of Chassidus, and because of their life that is connected to the Eibishter. So long as you have that, it's an anchor. And then the katan becomes a gadol, and things will get better, and you'll have your good days and your bad days, and your ups and your downs. So I think that the takeaway here is really a recognition of what we have, and I think the carbon really is the chassidus that we have, the ability to get away from ourselves, to get rid of the I, to have a little bit of bittul, not bittul in the like technical bittul way, but like understand the Rebbe's view and what the Rebbe taught us about the world and the Chatchila Riber and the big things and Mashiach coming and the world changing and all these big things that we're all dedicated to, so that carries us way beyond our individual life. And it's this is the story of of Deir Shvi. This is the story of bringing Mashiach, and this is the story of everybody who maybe had a dip in their Yiddishkeit. They should take a second and recognize the deep connection that they have with the Eibishter, and that will carry a person's cut into a gadol in the right time.
Phenomenal point. I think it was so beautiful that you concluded with this, just because we were getting carried away with the Lechatchila Riber, that you had to bring it back down. And I think you in the middle of your point, you veered off to the person that was struggling, and you didn't finish that. For the first part of the point is, even for the person who's not struggling, and he is recognizing his connection and everything like that, it can only happen through carbon. I'm just repeating what you said. You were in the middle of a sentence and you sort of went off to the person that was like the example from the other way, but which is phenomenal. But the first point you started with is also very important. That even for the guy who's not struggling, we're all struggling, but like what you called, not doing every single mitzvah perfectly. But even for the regular yid who's pushing to the darga of lechatchila riber, you can't get to lechatchila riber only with mitzvahs. You only get to lechatchila riber through carbon, and that's such an important point. So thank you for that.
That's the whole sikha.
That's the whole sikha. Yeah, 100%.
That's the beauty of the sikha.
That's the whole middle, the whole crux of the sikha, is that carbon is something entirely different. Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a good Shabbos. Send us your feedback, and we'll see you next week.